Could we be at the cusp of a financial crisis? A former Treasury Secretary thinks that's the case, but there's one thing that he's leaving out in his analysis with regards to the economy, but also gold. Let's talk about it as we explore. Whenever a former Treasury Secretary speaks, we listen, no matter who it is, no matter what side of the aisle it is politically. And by the way, this former Treasury Secretary has offended folks on both sides of the political aisle. So I think in a way, he's a smart guy. We should take what he says seriously. I think more so than our prior Secretary of the Treasury, who I don't think is as intellectually capable and is obviously very much ideological. So I'm taking this advice very seriously. Comparison. This is from former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers. And I'm going to be referencing a piece here from Benzinga that he has a stern warning for the United States and on the path to a crisis, much like the United Kingdom saw back in 2022. But before I go there, I want to remind you of channel sponsor Summit Metals. They have very good prices for gold and silver products. They're one of the fastest growing bullion dealers on the planet right now. So check them out and see if the prices and selections right for you at summitmetals.com. Now, gold has recently hit $3,500. We're just shy of it. And some people feel that we could revisit those numbers yet again soon. I think Larry Summers feels the same way. And he says, I would have said that a Liz Truss moment was very unlikely in the U.S. if you had asked me 3 months ago, Summers said in an April 22nd interview with BBC Radio, according to Business Insider. Now I think we're on a path towards having an episode like that. I think it will be very costly for our economy and for the global economy. Now, that was a little while since that interview has taken place, and a lot has happened since then. But nonetheless, there is some things that are still uncertain about where we could go in our economy. Summers' comparison pointed to Truss's total or brief term as British Prime Minister with her unfunded tax cut proposals triggered market chaos, a bond yield spike, and ultimately her resignation just 44 days into her tenure, which is the shortest in British history. Now, you think about it, unfunded tax cut proposals. You know, that's where I think that things get a little bit different and shaky, because it'd be very easy to fund those because you cut government spending. That's really what needs to be done, but we'll get into that in a moment. We did see gold reach very close to $3,500 per ounce back on April the 22nd, rising 31% since January. And obviously, it's pulled back since then because of the events that have occurred since April 22nd. Investors turned heavily towards safe haven assets amid fears of spiraling economic instability. Summers told the BBC that the U.S. financial system is exhibiting signs similar to emerging market economies under duress. Stocks go down, bonds go down, the currency goes down, gold starts to be hoarded. That's the pattern we're seeing in the United States. And, he's right. There had been more people buying gold bars, especially from Costco. I've done videos about that. But other places, too. It's picking up to some degree here in the United States. Of course, people are also buying Bitcoin and other decentralized assets, which are, but I think in a sense gold is really shining right now. And to a lesser extent, silver, too. But nonetheless, that is a backdrop of what we're seeing. Notwithstanding what has propped up gold's prices, central banks holding on to gold and adding more. A lot of them are, except for the United States of America right now, and I don't think Britain is adding any more gold as well. Certainly Canada is not. Most first world nations are not, except for many in the BRICS sector are adding more gold to their portfolios. Summers warned that the end point remains uncertain, but urged caution given the current trajectory. Economic conditions have remained volatile, In April, the dollar index weakened, boosting gold's appeal, although it later rebounded slightly amid signs of easing U.S.-China trade tensions. Indeed, that is the case, and that is what has kind of given somewhat of a reprieve. Adding to the market unease after Donald Trump announced the sweeping 145% tariff on Chinese goods earlier in April, the decision sparked a sharp sell-off across Wall Street, deepening fears of a prolonged trade war. But then after that announcement, Summers said, never before has an hour of presidential rhetoric cost so many people so much, estimating the loss of the new tariff policy could reach $30 trillion, roughly $300,000 per American family. But of course, that fear was kind of left, it's unfounded because of what has happened since then. And the recovery of the stock market to really pretty much give the largest recovery that I think we've seen in stock market history. Trump's actions towards the Federal Reserve also contributed to market anxiety, and we saw what he said about Jerome Powell, calling him a major loser, and about not cutting interest rates. He's still critical of that, but it has not. He's backed off ideas that he would be, quote, fired. With tensions between the White House and Fed intensified, and during this interview on NBC, he had no plans to remove Powell before his term ends in 2026. He says, why would I do that if I get to replace a person in another period of time? And that's exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a replacement, I think, in May of next year, and he's going to bide his time there. But nonetheless, trade tensions have eased greatly. Market has recovered, but again, we have a budget, what's known as the Big Beautiful Bill, that has yet to be passed, and so far it does not provide with much cuts in spending. It's not codifying the Doge cuts, and even some of the Doge cuts essentially have been ignored in some parts of the economy or in government. That's very frustrating. It just wants to feed itself. The beast wants to feed itself. So Doge does their work and then goes to another agency, and that agency ends up funding and going right back to where they were. Very frustrating indeed. In reality, government spending is the bulk of most of our economic problems. Notwithstanding, there have always been times of economic hills and valleys, so to speak, and uncertainty, and there's recessions, and yes, there's even and can be inflation with a gold standard. Yes, it has happened and it can happen, but it's much more muted and much more controlled because in and of itself of what gold has been for thousands of years, you can only mine and produce so much of it. You can only have so much of it at any given point in time. And of course, the Central Bank of Central Bankers knows this, and back in April 2019, they delegated gold as a Tier 1 asset, putting it equal to and on par with the dollar. And so that is a very powerful thing and a very powerful force. But tax cuts are not the problem. Government spending is a problem. Budget deficits and debts are mainly caused by government overspending and overreaching in many different areas of our lives. That is a real problem, folks. And so tariffs do cause prices to go up, especially if businesses, corporations pass that along to us, the consumer, which in large part they will, if not to make a political statement, in order to maintain some profitability. Companies need to be able to profit. That's the whole reason why they're in business. It's to profit. You can't fault them for that. But nonetheless, that means that you and I are going to take the brunt of it if these tariffs are not absorbed by foreign companies that send products to the United States or to agencies and companies themselves that are operating in the United States that take those goods. They're going to pass that along to us. And so that is something we're going to have to adjust to. But that is not inflation. That's price increases because of taxation. Inflation is as a direct result of the increase in the money supply, dollars, which has caused the value of which to lose because of the dilution of value because of the increase in the supply of these. Federal Reserve notes across the board And it's not just the paper versions of these that are increased. In fact, it's more along the lines of which have been digitized over the years. Nonetheless, the Treasury Secretary does make this warning, comparing it to what has happened in the past, especially there with London, with Great Britain. But what happened with Liz Truss? She proposed these tax cuts, but no spending cuts. That's the problem. That's really the bottom line. Big government wants to stay alive, wants to feed on itself, and stay big no matter what. And they will do whatever tactic it takes to feed that beast, even if it means demonizing those that want to try to control it and rein it in. Government is out of control, folks. But one thing is for sure, gold can never be out of control. It exists for what it is and what it has been for thousands of years. The price reflection is just that, or it's a reflection on what man has done to create the problems. And that includes big government. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Hope you found this video informative, insightful, and educational. Would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.